the meeting. Well done, everybody, for attending. Can we have apologies, please?
The only apologies I've received are from David Knott, who is working this evening. Not from anybody else. Andy,
Okay.
hello, Andy.
Evening.
Hi. We've got apologies from David. Are you all happy that we accept those apologies due to him working? Can you signify?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. Declarations of pecuniary interests, personal or prejudicial.
That's John Harbour. Hold on a minute. I'll just turn it there a minute. Hold on.
Yeah, yes, we're there. Okay, fine. Right you are.
Thanks, John.
There we are. So we're in. Hello, Warwick.
All right.
Hi, Warwick. Right. Item 2, to receive declarations of pecuniary interests or personal prejudicial matters. Bob, planning.
Yes, that's right, on the planning and just the general one of district and county personal interest.
Okay.
Yeah.
On payment.
Warwick.
Yeah, I got one to do with obviously next door at 2 Brent Street, but also there's one for 12 Brent Street as well, because their land adjoins all of our paddocks at the back.
Okay.
So I think that's 07 20 00012, Owen.
Got that. Yeah, got that down.
Okay.
And John, yours on a payment.
I'm on a payment.
Okay.
Okay.
Andrea,
right.
is she with us? Can you hear us, Andrea? No, not really getting it, are we?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. And what about Andrea?
Andrea, can you hear us?
No.
She's frozen.
Okay, let's move on to item 3. Confirmation of the minutes for July the 1st, July the 15th, August the 5th. Are you all? You've all been circulated. Are you happy that we take them as a true record and that I sign them? Can you signify, please? Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, from Malcolm.
Okay.
Incidentally, we haven't got Brian, I've noticed, either.
I'm just trying to invite him into the meeting at the moment.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if Andrea can hear us. Item 4, do you want to launch into the planning, Andrea, please?
No, can't hear us.
Can't hear us.
No. No, we're not getting it. Not getting anything, are we?
Okay. Warwick, have you been able to go through these, or Nigel?
Yeah, I went. Oh, go on, Bob.
Can I just ask if Owen can
yeah.
in my box?
Sure. Okay.
I'll leave the meeting.
Hold on. Just hold on a minute. I've got to learn how to put this back in the. Forgotten where to find the room, the waiting room now. Where do I get the waiting room from again?
If you hover over his name,
Right.
Where if you hover over his name and where it says more.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Put in waiting room. There we go. Gone. Just remembering all these things, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Can Andrea hear us still? No. Nigel, do you want to go in for it?
Sure. Okay, so I had I had some discussion with Andrew on a number of these. I had a quick look at them again tonight. First one is 0720 00012. Erection of a agricultural barn and demolition of an existing building at Peatlands, 12 Brent Street. So this involves taking down a wooden sort of like field shelter and replacing it with a more permanent structure. I don't know if anyone's looked at the plans or looked at this online. It looks to be in keeping with the surrounding areas. It's half brick, and the upper half is wooden structure. It's for keeping equipment and livestock in.
Okay, it's the from looking at it, it's the end of the track. Correct me if I'm wrong, Warwick, Nigel. It's the end of the track that runs between David Sturgis's house and I think is it Mr. Dyke that lives next door.
Correct.
And it would seem that it's the access, according to the planning, the access to it will not be down the lane, but from the back gate of 12 Brent Street. That's what they're saying. That's what he's saying anyway.
Hey, Brian.
What is therefore the recommendation?
I would say the recommendation is no observations for this one. I mean, it's I don't see there being an issue. There's no comments from anybody else on the like comments from neighbours or anything about it.
Okay.
It's in keeping. It's replacing an old field shelter, which I know has been sort of like blown down in the wind in the past, and this is just more of a permanent structure.
Okay, so it looks like the advice from our planning committee is that we put this application through on the basis of no observations. That is the proposal. Is there a seconder for that?
Yes. Malcolm.
Malcolm, okay. All those in favour of that then? Okay. Andrew, you can hear us. That's brilliant. Okay.
I can, sorry.
Was that a unanimous? Hands up.
I think so. Of those those that can vote, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I can't vote. Sorry.
No, you
I
can't.
can't.
You declared an interest, haven't you?
That's okay. All right.
I'm not going to put you in the waiting room, Andrew, because we might lose you.
Yeah.
If I put you in the waiting room, we might lose you. So.
No, just keep me there.
Andrea, do you want to go over treble 013 then now, please? 162 Brent Street, Pruning.
Okay, so this is to raise the crown by 2 metres from the ground, to prune minimally away from the road and the electricity pole to a stable growth point. This is good arboreal practice. It's for the Stringer family of 162 Brent Street. It's definitely the right time of year to actually start to trim these trees because the nesting season has just finished in September. So I think that this is perfectly acceptable. It's a T1 oak.
Okay, so the proposal is then, by the sound of it, then that we accept this on the grounds of good arboreal practice, which
yes,
is our...
That's right.
Okay, that's the... do I have a seconder for Andrea's motion? Okay, Nigel, all those in favour?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Malcolm. Yes.
Right.
Unanimous.
Treble 014, Andrea, change of use of land to equestrian and the erection of a stable block at, I don't know, Nyumba, Wick Lane.
Yeah. So the application, as it says, is to change the use of land to equestrian and the erection of a stable block. There is a statement, an access statement and some photographs. And what they're saying is that it will be used exclusively by the applicant for personal use to keep horses. At no time shall there be any commercial purpose whatsoever, including livery or in connection with an equestrian tutor or leisure rides. Local businesses are and will continue to be used for the supply of feed, bedding, veterinary and farrier services. There are no objections. It is in a low risk area of flooding, as detailed by the Environmental Agency. And although I haven't seen any comments up till today, as of the 26th of August, there wasn't anybody that had put in anything against this or for this. I don't know if Nigel checked today.
Yeah, I checked tonight. There was nothing in there.
Okay, so they're saying that the character of the building is already as traditional as it possibly can, and it is within keeping. It is perfectly acceptable living in a village that we would actually provide equestrian facilities, to stable our horses, on land. So, and it seems to be a good use of the land for this family to actually progress with their horses.
So I take it that your proposal is that we accept this on the grounds that it is a worthwhile or suitable development for the particular. Yeah.
Yes, and it's within keeping, the character. It's to stable 2 horses, and there's nothing about the height or where it's positioned. It's not overlooked, and it won't impact on the character or the landscape. So I think that is a very acceptable proposal.
Okay, that's the proposal then, that it is within keeping and character of the property and the rural environment, which it is. That's the proposal. Is there a seconder for that? Yeah, John, all those in favour?
Yes, Malcolm.
All right, okay. 0015, change of use and conversion to 2 traditional agricultural buildings to private dwellings.
Yeah, have you all had a chance to look at this? There's quite a substantial report on this.
Yes.
So it's a local family, and they have a small holding without buildings that they are seeking planning permission to actually develop into 2 dwellings. If you look at the pictures, they are the agricultural buildings are quite dilapidated, and I think that if they were to be turned into new buildings that were to be habitable, that they would be beautiful. There is a substantial report, like I said, showing the existing elevations. They're not proposing to make that any different. There is no problems with the access because there is already a property there accessing the highway. There are no neighbour comments. Are there any today, Nigel?
No, I didn't see any.
No. Highways, they want to have further consideration, because I think, and I'm not entirely sure, and I'll be guided by this, but because there is already a property there, it would be if those properties were sold separately, but I don't think that that's what the proposal is. I think that they want to develop those buildings so that they become residential for the family to use. There is also an ecologist report. They did find bats. That in itself could become an issue. However, if the ecologist makes a report, which he has done, and that I've read that, they are going to put in place, they've done a watch, and they are going to put in place bat boxes. And because they are old barns and buildings, that would be something that you would naturally find. However, that there is the protection of the species is actually going to be put in place, and the ecologist has been involved and will continue to be involved. Also, the Somerset Wildlife Trust, they also had a comment, and they said that they've noticed that the planning application was supported by the ecology, and they would support the measures of mitigation and enhancement as outlined in the sections of the ecologist report. So again, that is supportive Again, good use of buildings, providing homes for local people, an improvement on the site. It is a big plot of land, and I think that, you know, by changing those buildings and making those into better properties, I think that would really enhance that site completely. It's a really nice proposal.
So it sounds that your recommendation is then that we accept this, we support this application on the grounds of what, property improvements, or?
Yeah, and providing another home, you know, that it's within character. It would actually really a good use of the buildings that are already there. Yeah.
Have you got those points?
Got all that. Got all that. Yeah.
So that's the proposal from Andrea and her team. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Yeah, Nigel or John, all those in favour?
Yes.
Malcolm's okay with that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, 0016.
Okay, this is a sycamore tree in number 1, the Willows, and it is to reduce the lateral branches encroaching on the property by 1.5 metres. So again, September, this is the ideal month to actually get these trees pruned. It has got a TPO on it, and they are only asking to reduce it by 1.5 metres.
So traditionally we would support that then, Andrea, on the grounds of good arboreal practice, and let it go through. Is that your proposal?
Yes, it is.
Okay, seconder for that? John, Warwick, all those in favour?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Malcolm's okay. Yeah.
Colin, may I just butt in on this for a moment? Personally, I've got a huge sycamore tree in our back garden, which I want to get reduced. Do I have to get permission?
Only if it's got a TPO on it.
As far as I know, there isn't one.
Yeah, you'll be fine. Just
and
as long as it's out of nesting season, so between September and April.
This would be the time.
You can do it, yeah.
Right, thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, 0072. I couldn't find this one for some reason, but it's not in our patch really.
No, and we are only a consultee only. So it's on the RSPCA site. So it would be Burnham without, an erection of a storage container and formation of hard standing at land to the west of the Brent Knoll Animal Centre. The information that I was able to access was that as a consultee that we would make no observations, or we support it.
Okay.
But we are only a consultee.
Okay, so that sounds to be the recommendation or the proposal that we support, that we pass it with no observations, Andrea?
I think so, because it doesn't affect us.
No. That's the proposal. Seconder? Nigel? All those in favour?
Yeah.
Yes, from Malcolm.
That's it, lovely. Okay, 0017.
This is where...
Is that 2 Brent Street?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't participate in that.
Okay. Nigel?
Yeah, okay, so this is about a variation of the condition on the planning permission for the erection of those 2, 3 and 4 bedroom dwellings with associated car park. And this is about to installing a footbridge onto the highway lands at the land to the south of east of 2 Brent Street. I looked online, Southwest Heritage, no objections. But I believe there's an issue with regard to the highways on this. I mean, I don't know the history of this, but I believe it needs to be signed off before there's any acceptance of this. Yeah.
From what I gather on this one, the developer has asked for time and time again regarding this footbridge, and highways have not come back to them. And the only way they can get highways to come back to them is by putting in a planning application for this bridge. It seems to be quite, if you like, a sensible thing, because it gives the people from the far end of the site, correct me if I'm wrong here, access onto the main road and the footpath. I personally don't see any problem, but we may want to appeal it. We may want to just pass it through with no observations. I don't know what the recommendation, what you've discussed with in planning, Nigel.
Warwick, was you going to say something?
Yeah, I know I'm not allowed to comment or anything, but essentially it's for them. They're trying to change the clause that the Sedgemoor laid down. Is that until that they can sell the houses, but the original caveat was after the 10th house, the footbridge had to be fully installed. And all they're doing is just asking to change the caveat from the original planning to the 15th house, because they stand more chance of trying to get highways to agree to put the footbridge in, because if they can't actually satisfy that caveat, none of the houses can actually be lived in, and potentially we could have a development where none of the properties can be occupied until building control sign it off. And because Sedgemoor have stipulated a caveat that the footbridge has to be in before X houses are sold, and the highways are dragging their heels, potentially you could end up with a situation where none of the houses could be lived in because highways won't actually allow them to put the footbridge in.
Okay, so based on that, surely the recommendation will be to support this application for the footbridge.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to give the developers a chance to get past highways, else potentially they're in breach of their planning obligations, and therefore none of the houses could be occupied, which is not what either.
Yeah, so the proposal is then that we support this on the basis, presumably, of a reasonable development, and I don't think we can say any more than that, really. Is there a seconder for that? John, all those in favour?
Yeah.
Malcolm?
Unanimous. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done. Thanks a lot. Right, reports.
Hold on, just get Bob back. Get Bob back.
Yeah.
Right. Here he is. Yep. All back, Bob.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Bob. Can we receive your report from district and county, please?
Yeah, just a couple of items really. First one, the update on the sort of coronavirus figures that we've had through this month. Somerset R value is now recorded as being between 0.8 and 1.1, which is sort of around similar to the national picture. In terms of the numbers of deaths that we've had in Somerset, the latest figures are showing that we're actually running at 4% below the normal annual death rate over the last 5 years. So at present, the coronavirus at this time is not showing an increase over the normal background number of the deaths that there would be in the county. But obviously, again, it's a question of ensuring that we don't relax and let the pressure off and cause problems through people not following the rules and regs. Return to school is happening across the county. It's being looked at on an individual school by school basis, although there's a lot of common themes between them. They're being encouraged to have sort of the so-called sort of bubbles of classrooms, so that the kids stay together both in the classroom and break times and stay away from other groups. They're also looking at having obviously the regular cleaning and hand sanitizing being available for the kids, and also the classrooms, as you've seen probably on the telly as well, are being reorganized so that they're more almost in a traditional rows of desks separated from each other rather than people round tables. So that's going to be monitored and make sure that there aren't any spikes that are sort of picked up in terms of rate of infections, and hopefully that will then mean that almost all the county council schools will be back in operation fully. In terms of both district and county, you'll probably have seen in the media there's an lawful conversation about unitary at the moment. As you know, I've updated you in the past that county had written to the Secretary of State asking him to request us to review the reform of local government in Somerset. As yet, we haven't actually had an official request from him, but what's happened now is the county have put together their business case and published it under the name of One Somerset. There are various websites that you can look at to see the business plan. The districts, all four, have come together in a combined plan which they're calling Stronger Somerset, which basically is a 2 unitary solution across the county. So rather than everything being under one single council, there would be 2 councils, one of which would be based on what is currently Sedgemoor and what's called Somerset West and Taunton, and the other half would be what is currently Mendip and South Somerset. So in effect, it's a north-south split of the county. The very basic argument is county believe the 1 unitary would be more efficient and would have economies of scale, and that they could devolve powers down to parishes and towns to remain local. The district's alternative system, they believe, would be in itself closer to towns, villages and the electorate, because they believe that the single county would be too remote, and that in effect, by trying to devolve powers back down, county would in effect be recreating districts by another name, because where some towns might be able to pick up a lot of the functions that are done by a district, parishes generally that tend to have often 1 employee, basically the clerk, are going to find it very difficult to pick up that sort of work. So it's going to be it's your pays your money and it makes your choice as to which you think is the right way forward. Ultimately, there will be a public consultation that will be coming forward. We believe it should be about an 8-week period that will happen. They've obviously got to work out how they're going to be able to do that, bearing in mind the COVID regulations. But that will take place. Parishes will be asked for their views, and at that point, you're going to need to come up with a view if you have one. But ultimately, the decision will not be made locally; it will be made by the Secretary of State. But he will obviously base it on the evidence that he's got from the feedback that he's had across the county. So it's up in the air. The timetable, both are operating on the same timetable, which in effect is that once the Secretary of State makes his decision, the new local authority, whether it be one of them or 2 of them, would take place as and from May of 2022, and it would be in that May that elections would take place to the new combined authorities in effect. So that will be something which will work out over the next few weeks and months. And probably by the new year, we'll have a better idea as to which way the Secretary of State is heading.
Can I ask a quick question on that, Bob? What sort of activities do you think would be devolved to a parish council like Brent Knoll? And if those activities, or rather, no, I'll reword it. What pressure will that place on existing councillors? What will it mean? Will it mean that extra work for councillors and more work for them and more responsibility for council members?
Yeah, the sorts of things, I mean, they're generally looking at the more local. So for example, at the moment we have verge maintenance, let's say, done generally by the county council. You may well see elements of that being devolved down to local parishes to take on the highway maintenance within their own patch. Things like elements of small repairs of potholes could be devolved to parishes to look at. To be honest, it's not going to be councillors on those sort of things that will end up doing it, but the parish would obviously end up buying that service from somebody. The most likely thing would be that you would end up with clusters of parishes, I would think, coming together with a. You remember some years ago we talked about a thing, it was Andrew led on it, with the Lengthsman.
Yeah.
And that would be the sort of scheme that may resurrect itself through this, because it would have to be that sort of element. In terms of the towns, they're talking about maybe passing over the car parks for them to run and maintain. So it's that sort of service that could come down. They haven't worked out either of the setups yet as to what would happen with things like planning. There could be some elements of planning devolved to parishes, but that would tend to be, I guess, the smaller applications. But again, you'd have to work out how the parish would get the planning advice, because at the moment, obviously, parishes make recommendations, they don't make decisions. If it comes to the point where the parish is making the decision, you're legally responsible for the decision you make. So you would have to have that sort of advice coming to you at that stage. So it's very much, as I say, at the moment, an open offer that's being made by the county to parishes and towns to say, what do you want? And if you tell us what you want, and we'll sort of provide it if we can. But that's the sort of way forward. It will mean more responsibilities for parishes to take on. The other thing that may come out of it is you might well find the smaller parishes just aren't able to cope with that. So you could end up seeing potentially mergers of parishes coming down the line that might happen.
Okay, Brian.
Have we any idea, or have they any idea what sort of monies they're allegedly going to save?
Yeah,
they have. I mean, both the county and the district plans have come up with a figure of over 5 years. They're both in around about 40 to 50 million that they think they will save. They both say that they will cost somewhere between 15 and 20 million to set up in the first place, and both systems are saying they will give a payback within 2-3 years. Now, obviously, that is dependent on, first of them, not overspending on the costs. And when they had the recent merger between Taunton and West Somerset, it didn't come out anywhere near as cheap as they were expecting it to, in terms of the mergers of redundancies and those sort of costs. And then, of course, it depends on what the savings are that are made, as to whether you can then deliver them. A lot of that is going to be, they believe, costs in manpower, in terms of the number of staff employed. Particularly the savings are coming from the sort of upper echelons of the councils. It would be the senior directors, because they're saying you'd only have one chief executive or two rather than the 5 you currently have. But to be frank, yes, they cost a lot, but there aren't that many of them when you actually make the savings. And if they're going to continue to provide the services, then you can't get rid of a lot of the staff, because otherwise you can't physically do the job. So they have both come up with forecast costs and savings. It would be fair to say, I think, there's been a number of other unitaries that have happened across the country, and there is a very mixed bag of those that did hit their figures and an awful lot that didn't.
Okay, Andrew, you wanted a question. You're on mute, Andrew.
I thought I switched off. My apologies. I've read through the Somerset Strongest document, and I've got to say it's a typical political document. It's got absolutely nothing in it apart from sweeping statements. So at some point, somebody's going to have to sit down with us and put a proper proposal to us. I sound a bit hard on that, but it is, they're saying 54.56 million will be saved, but there's not, and it's all statements such as, we're going to give you a better health service. Nobody's saying why or how. And even on planning, it's going to be a more efficient system. Again, nobody's saying how or why. So I think at the moment the reading is lean. And as a parish council, are we likely to actually sit down and hear the evidence for both these cases in a realistic forum?
Certainly, that one of the problems they're going to have with this whole reorganisation is, whichever one you go for, whichever one happens, there will be a plan as to what they think will happen, and then, as I say, in May 2022 there will be elections, and at those elections there will be the new authority will be created. Now, there is nothing within any of the plans that are on the table at the moment that binds that new authority to do what they say they're going to do. So you can, within that document, you can say to everyone what the changes are going to be, but ultimately it will be down to the new authority that's elected in 2022 to actually decide how it's going to move forward. So very much both of the documents are, as you said, a framework of where they think they want to get, but it is light on detail, partly because, as I say, until you get to that 2022 start line, that's where the decision will be made, because it may well be, I mean, as things stand at the moment, there are very different political views across the county as to which is the right way to go. And depending on how that is reflected in an election, you could get very different outcome of how the things will be organised.
Yeah, and I understand that, Bob. What I think I'm saying on that is this is a sort of Brexit type argument where it's more emotional than it is actual factual. And as a as a parish council, we're going to be asked what our views are. And at the moment, you can't give a view because it would be an emotional view, not a factual view. And I think that's got to be fed back up the line, or we're just going to have, as you say, I've seen this in business. There's a big business plan and it fails dramatically and nobody's responsible. And the only people who are going to pick that up are the parish councils.
Yeah.
Right.
Following up what Andrew said, I think as a parish council, we ought to have some sort of view of where we would like to go, whether it's unitary or otherwise, and because otherwise we could be landed in something that we don't really want. So I think it might be an idea to have quite one evening a discussion or some info.
Yeah, my concern, and I think Andrew and you, Brian, have echoed it.
Sorry?
We're going to need different sort of councillors, probably people that are far more involved in day-to-day running of the council. And I think that's why it's important that we look at it in the round to see exactly what we want to do. I mean, do we want to, for instance, and I'll just throw this out, do we want to combine with East Brent and Limpsham? Do we want to combine with somebody else to have a bigger say and a higher diversity of councillors that can actually be more proactive? So there's all sorts of arguments we need to explore. I don't know what your thoughts are, Bob.
I think all I was saying in terms of the responsibilities, I don't think either of the two plans will force parishes to take on more. What they will do is they will offer services that you can take on. If you don't, then those will be run at a level that the county-wide or the new single unitary wide would feel is appropriate. So,
well, Bob, that's going back to the way we are at the moment. If we have control over those things, at least we can look after ourselves and look after our own village.
Yeah.
So I would rather do that than go back to the way we are at the moment, having to plead with people to fill in potholes and plead with people to do verges or bash hedges about. So, but it's the way we go about it. We need strength if we're going to go forward. We don't want to be in a weak situation, and it needs more of as I think Andy is alluding to, some form of business structure, so we know where we are if we've got to take on extra responsibilities. Owen.
Just a point from Malcolm. He just wants to emphasise that he would favour the two option out of the options that have been put forward to consider. So you just wanted to make the point that that's where he's sitting at the moment. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Brian,
I think Warwick was before me.
Yeah. I mean, all I was going to say is that
Oh, sorry.
experience in business is that a large amount of these business plans that are put on the table, the only way they save money is to actually proliferate the responsibility and the fiscal control lower down the line without actually any of the money. So they can save money on one hand, we'd increase our responsibility. We'd also have to have more fiscal governance on the limited amount of money we got and where we go. So we would never be able to do what we want to do because we wouldn't have the money to do it, but we'd have all the responsibility. So it's a double-edged sword. The reason the council want to go that way is to save money by amalgamating resources and also lowering down the chain of command, more responsibility without any of the financial governance. Because we'd have to apply for any necessary funding to either fill in potholes or deal with highways. None of us on the county or the parish council are employed on the parish council to do anything to do with highways or anything else that requires more involvement with the legislation. So it would be a double-edged sword.
Okay. Bob, should we be putting these thoughts together? I noticed that there's a Skype meeting on September the 8th for clerks and one other. Should we be looking at that or attending that and then bringing the thoughts from that Skype call back to the parish council?
Yes, very much so. I mean, I think the only thing I would say is that to some extent it's a bit like the old Ford car, is which black car do you want? You aren't going to have a choice of what's happening now as opposed to the proposals, because in effect what's happened over recent years is the government some time ago was very keen on unitary authorities. They tried to force places to convert to unitaries and they got a fairly good kicking at the time. So they backed off doing that and they basically said, actually it's now up to you in local areas. You can decide if you want to go unitary, you can go that way. However, what they've also done over time is funding of councils has been tweaked so that districts and county shires have not had the same sort of settlements as unitary authorities. So there has been a push from behind for councils to say, almost we have to go unitary if we're going to get the same level of funding as the other areas of the country. And it's been implied that that's going to get more of. So that is where I think the county has come from in its request to government to say, we can see where this is going and we have to jump, otherwise we're not going to be there. They're coming out with a local government bill this autumn, which is being trailed as very much a bigger step towards unitary across the whole of the country. So it's a question of county made that jump and wrote to the Secretary of State. The districts, I think it would be fair to say, had no interest in changing fundamentally what they were doing. They wanted a more evolutionary thing of how can we work better together. Maybe we merge our payroll and human resources. The sort of back office would merge, but you would still have stayed with separate councils. The train has moved on from there, and that's why the districts have now come up with their alternative plan, which they feel addresses some of the weaknesses they perceive in the single unitary. But ultimately there is a definite steer from central government that this is the way they want people to go. Okay,
one more question, please, Andy. Then I'm not going to spend more time because this is
just to verify that, and maybe it's what the answer is. Government announced in the last week they're going to be down to 203 councils from 2,000 councils. So I think the unitary is where we're going. So I think we need to be more involved so we understand how that's going to affect the parish.
Okay, well, Owen and I suppose it'll be me or Bob will go on this Skype course and call next week, and then we'll report back what they say. Okay.
One thing I have noticed that it's on a Zoom, I understand, not on Zoom. It's on a Skype, not a Zoom.
Yeah.
I have not got Skype at the moment, so I would need to get onto that because I haven't got it.
All I would say, Colin, is I think whoever goes from the parish, I don't think it should be me because obviously I'm involved at other levels. So I think it's important that other people get to hear it from the horse's mouth as it was from the other meeting.
Okay. Well, if maybe Andy and I could do it if Owen can't get on there, or we'll liaise as to who's available. Owen, is that okay?
I think it would be. I think it makes more sense for it to be elected persons, frankly.
Okay.
To be honest.
All right. I'll speak to Andrew and see whether
I use Skype if that's any use for you.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Okay, let's move on, please. Footpaths report. Who's Footpaths?
Cynthia.
Okay. Well,
and David.
Bob?
Can I just report one thing, which is the footpath that runs down past what they call the chicken field, where you get to the bridge that crosses the Reen. There was a piece of metal that was sticking out of the ground there a little while ago, which was dealt with. It's sticking back out of the ground again. We need to get it knocked in because it's a rather nasty piece of angle iron that's sticking out the ground.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll have a look at it. Okay. Anything else on footpaths?
The only thing I would say is the quote we've had from Jason today on the stonework, chippings. 545 pounds. That's for the job that Jason has quoted for.
There's no VAT in that, is there?
No VAT.
No. I walked the job with David last week, and so he knows what he's got to do in terms of
what Jason's got to do.
What Jason has to do. Sorry. They know where they're going to get the aggregate from. They're going to put a liner down on the path. I'm happy for that work to go ahead because it's within more or less £40 of our budget. My concern is that it really needs to be done before the end of September, before the paths really do start to get muddy. But Jason is fully aware of what needs to be done. Could I have your agreement that we issue an order to Jason to carry out this work in accordance with the instructions he's already received on what needs to be done?
A proposal, please, and seconder, really.
Well, I would propose it that we instruct Jason to do the work. Seconder?
Seconder, Warwick.
Nigel, all those in favour?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and Malcolm.
We move forward. Brilliant. Thank you. But can you say that we'd like the work completed by the end of September, please?
I can do that.
Okay. Highways.
Yes, there's nothing to report.
Nothing to report from Malcolm.
But, my main consideration is that there's been a lack of coordination between the roadworks that have been going on in between Brent Knoll and East Brent, and also the roadworks at the A38 end that are underway at present. Today there was no action whatsoever anywhere on that.
Okay. Did you all hear that?
Yeah.
So basically, coordination is what Malcolm's having a problem with. Coordination of the roadworks that have been taking place in the village.
Well, they put right down where I live. They put loads of bollards around, and that's it. They've been there for a week or more. nothing's happening. So I would agree with Malcolm.
Well, it's a bit of a perfect storm because East Brent is being shut from the 2nd of this month for 2 weeks. And also Station Road, the bridge over the railway line, is being closed on the 9th. So that's within the 2nd week. So potentially there's just nowhere to get out of the village. And we'd have ended up with a perfect storm if at our end of Brent Street was still shut as well. We could have never got out of the village. So I agree with Malcolm, the coordination and the actual how the roadworks have been done is a complete shambles.
Would it be prudent for us to get a letter out advising them of our concerns? Because it's going to be, with the work down Brent Street and the traffic lights, you're going to get people backed up there, especially around the shop. It'll be chaos. And people parking on the road, it's going to be bad. Bob?
Just to clarify one thing, in terms of the East Brent closure, that's basically Wick Lane, not West Lane, West Road, is they're going to be closing it there for doing works for the gas. So residents of East Brent will be having to go out there 370. They won't be coming through Brent Knoll, so it'll be the residents this side that will come through us. And in terms of the railway bridge, Warwick's right, there is roadworks going ahead there, but they're going to be traffic light managed. They won't be completely closing it. Basically what they're doing is they're replacing fencing. We've had the fence knocked down several times. They're putting up palisade fencing to try and make it more solid, but it will be it'll be a traffic light give and take one rather than a complete road closure on that particular section.
Okay, thanks, Bob.
I think part of the problem, Chairman, is that obviously for 2 or 3 months they didn't have people on the road doing so much. So what's happening now is basically as soon as one set of roadworks are finishing, it's on to the next one and it's working its way around, particularly the fact obviously we've got this massive doing of the gas main throughout the whole of the area. Before too long and before Christmas, they're going back into Station Road with water main works again. So that will be coming forward before Christmas as well. So there is going to be more coming down the track as well, but they are trying to make sure that they're not completely blocking more than one way at any one time, but there are a lot of things kicking off at the same time.
A question then on the end Station Road development. When they put the culvert in and start to construct the access to the site, surely they will be restricting traffic on that corner as well.
Yes, certainly they will. I mean, they've already got booked in, I think it's for next week. I believe it's next week. They're doing the power line that sits currently in where the road's going to come out. That's being moved next week. So that's booked in as again, a traffic light issue there. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Is that okay, highways, with everyone? Happy to discuss it, Bob?
Could I just raise one thing, which was when the people doing the gas were working down at the end of Brent Street, they obviously made their compound near the gas box. They flattened a number of our wooden posts with the reflectors on. And I think we ought to be contacting them to ask them to make good and replace those posts and put them back into place before they leave the village.
Okay.
So I think more importantly, Bob, we should raise the issue of the dumped vehicle that is dangerously parked at the end of Brent Street, which is far more important than a couple of wooden posts.
The dumped vehicle has been reported to the police and hopefully they're following it up.
Well, it will go and stick blue stripe tape around it.
Okay. All right. Move on. Item C. Andy, I think you were doing the green inspection, weren't you?
I was. I've put a report in of completed and outstanding. There's a few outstanding. The two areas I think of note for probably members for this meeting is the bench on the way in has a broken slat and a sharp point protruding, and I think that needs immediate attention before injury happens. And point 14, which is where we've taken the post and the chain away on the climbing frames, there's the soil stabilizing matters come through, and that's a sharp trip hazard. The rest of it is largely just maintenance and upgrading across, although I've raised 1 or 2 points, I think, for discussion. There's the bench on behind the playing frames, behind the basketball net, which is obviously not being used because it's in quite poor repair and it's in a fairly dark place. And that is just going to deteriorate. And I think that should be moved so that it can be used and we don't need to buy another bench that way. And I think that's something that could be discussed. And the second one is down the back end. Every time I've gone down, I've picked up a lot of rubbish, and it all tends to be down the back end where people can't be bothered to come up to the front and put it in the bin. So would a waste bin at the back of the green be useful for collecting rubbish? I think that's the main points. The rest, I think Nigel will probably pick up over the next month.
Well, I think Owen has picked up the work with, who are you speaking to, Owen?
Well, we've got a quote from Paul Dixon, which I sent you earlier on. I don't know whether you all had a chance to look at it.
Yeah.
Paul has actually quoted us for doing some of the work on the benches, including fixing them. One of the things that's come out, though, is somebody must have the fixings. Who has
them?
Oh, brilliant. Okay, because obviously you'll need those when he comes to do the work.
They're concrete mounting, so that means he's going to have to put concrete plinths under it.
Which is what he's quoted for, actually.
Okay.
So you saw the quote, I think about 500 and just under 500 pounds, there or thereabouts, just under. I mean, basically, he's going to do a lot of these jobs that we've been waiting to do for some time. Staining the benches that need staining, fixing the new bench in place, because we don't actually know where that's going yet, do we? The picnic table, do we know where that's going?
It seems to be well used where we positioned it.
Yeah.
Of all the benches, it seems to be the most used.
Is that the best way to leave it then, is it?
It certainly enables someone to have their own privacy, if you like, using that, whereas the other two benches are close together and big groups get there. I mean, when I've been down there in the last couple of Fridays and Mondays, it's been really well used, and the benches have, with people having lunch and picnics. So I'm quite relaxed where it is, unless somebody wants to move it elsewhere.
So is it your wish that we give Paul an okay, a thumbs up on that quote, or what are you feeling?
Bob, you want to say?
I was just going to say, I think happy to go with the quote. Equally, as you were saying, I think the position of the new bench is fine. The only slight disagreement I would have with Andy is the bench behind the basketball net. The kids certainly have been using it. The bench itself is an old one, which we got second hand actually, which is why it looks somewhat less than new. But certainly the kids were using it well there until somebody decided they were going to move. It's been moved out from behind. But it tended to work that the kids, some of them were playing in front and others were sat behind, all chatting with each other anyway. So it did seem to get fairly well used, but it does need to get fixed. Wherever it gets put, it needs to be solid, because otherwise it will go walkabout. And unfortunately, one or two of the kids decided to turn it upside down and then try and kick the seats off. So if it's fixed in place, that's more difficult to do.
I'm happy with that explanation. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's decide that we're going to put that. I mean, we could put that small bench right in the far left corner there's an old bench up there, which is near the swings. It could go up there so that families could sit near the swings. Might be a suggestion. But is it your wish that whoever, say Brian or Andy and myself, go down and just decide where it's located?
I'm happy with that.
You're happy with that?
I'm happy with that.
Okay, I'll I'll get together then with Andy and Bob and Brian and maybe John, hopefully, and we'll go down and see where it all goes. Okay.
Would just say, Colin, don't forget the kids and the teenagers, because they do make use of it where it is.
Okay.
And what about Paul Dixon? Do we want to go back to Paul?
Yes, to go back. Oh, sorry. The proposal is that we accept Paul's quotation in the sum of 500 and...
It's just around about 500. Actually, I think it's 505. I think I calculated.
Okay. To carry out remedial works. Does that include putting the trim trail right as well? That's
it does. It does include that.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that? Andy, all those in favour?
Yes.
Okay.
Malcolm? Yes.
Okay.
Fine. Okay.
GB Sports, Owen?
Well, I sent you the, you had earlier on in the season, you had the annual sort of overall check, and I sent you recently the updated GB Sports report. And as Bob pointed out to me a little bit earlier, there are some issues that keep cropping up there about things like turfing around some of the edges, which I think we could probably get Jason to do, actually, to be honest. We could probably find out from Jason if he could have a look at those as per the report from GB.
Now's the time to put turf down or seed.
So I'll have a word with Jason on that and ask him to have a look at some of those areas and see whether he can do that in for us.
Thank you. Warwick, I can't see you on my screen, so if you want to say anything, can you sort of shout? Because I can't see you, I'm sorry, Warwick. Item G, police crime speed watch SID updates.
I've got nothing to say on that apart from obviously the SID update, which comes up later, I think, doesn't it?
Okay, so let's move on to SID later on then, please.
Yeah.
Correspondence?
Nothing that you haven't already received by email.
Okay. Finance?
Not a lot to say there, really. I've put back on the agenda again the new payments. Obviously, the fixed payments will continue as per the normal agreements with Unity Trust Bank. There are two additional ones. John, where's John? John, you're declaring a pecuniary interest on one of them. So let me just do things properly here. All right. Okay. Basically, we've got GB Sports £96 for their annual inspection report, and £19.48 for John. If we can do the GB Sports one first, where John is included.
Can you have your acknowledgement that we pay GB Sports a sum of £96, please? Okay, brilliant.
Unanimous. Okay with that, Malcolm?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now, John is not involved in this.
Okay.
But there is a flagpole repair that John has dealt with, costing £19.48.
All those in favour?
Yeah.
Malcolm's okay with that? Yeah. Okay. So those payments will be made tomorrow. In fact, they've already been made. We just need authorisation by Bob and Colin.
Okay.
So that's okay for that. No other matters on finance. There is one item which is not actually on the agenda, but it needs to be talked about now. I mentioned in my financial report about the Silver qualification. Now, there's a big change taking place at the moment with this qualification between SALC, SLCC and governments. And the whole thing is going to turn about face come October. So it's actually quite important for us to get stuck into this thing now before they change the whole thing, because it's going to double in price. So they're asking that we pay a registration fee to SLCC of £350 for the qualification. Now, it is my intention, and quite possible I should be able to complete that by the end of this financial year, and maybe even sooner. Once we've got the qualification, we'll become a qualified council, which gives us a lot of opportunities for widening our horizons a bit as a council with a qualified clerk. It's interesting to note, though, I found out today from SLCC, only 24% of clerks in this country are qualified. 24%. It's only a quarter, which is amazing, actually, when you think about it. And that includes town councils as well. So there is going to be a push now, I think, to get clerks qualified over the next couple of years.
Okay.
So,
I'd like to propose that
£350 has to be paid online in the next 14 days. That's why I'm raising it now, because
I'd like
it can't be
propose-
passed over.
I'd like to propose that the parish council pay the sum of £350 in order that we can become, is it SALC or SLCC?
SLCC is the registration authority, SALC is the training authority.
Okay. Bob?
Split.
Bob?
Yeah, happy to second that, Chairman. I mean, as we've had circulated the papers, hopefully everyone's seen the bit about the general power of competence, which we can't make use of unless we have a SILCA trained clerk. And I mean, basically, it gives us a lot more freedom under the current rules. In effect, a parish council can do what it is told it can do by the legislation. Whereas if you get the power of general competence, it means in effect we can do anything we're allowed. We can do anything unless there are rules that say we can't. So it does make it a lot more freedom for councils to be able to act for the benefit of their own community. So happy to second that.
It is a worthwhile qualification. I've actually done some work on it already, but of course that was quite a long time ago, and it's all changed now since that time. It's quite a detailed. It involves something like about 200 hours of putting a portfolio together, and you know, I'm very happy to do it because I think it's important for the council to have that quality council status, frankly. So I'm happy to give that time to it.
Thank you, Owen. Very grateful for that. Thank you. There's the proposal, and as a seconder, all those in favour?
Yes.
Malcolm's yes.
Malcolm, yes. Unanimous. Thanks, Owen. Thank you. Matters arising. I mean, we've dealt with A, unitary consultation. Bodies Lane footpath, we've dealt with that. Dog bin and rubbish bin provision and the additional sites of, well, Brian and I suggested that a bin was placed at the bottom of the little lane before you go into the, what field is it called, Bob? What generally is?
They call it the chicken field, but
the chicken field, i.e.
It's
the
Barry's field, isn't it?
yeah, right opposite the tennis club.
It's between Faith Evans' house and the Goff's house.
Yeah, and that it would be good to be positioned down by the gate. I think it's a sensible place. I'm not sure how it will be received by the Goffs or the people that may be going to buy Faith's house, but that's Brian and I's recommendation.
The Goffs have got a huge, big, tall fence, and also it's overgrown as well. So I'm sure they wouldn't even know it was there.
Yeah.
Unless smell, of course.
Could we get some prices for the provision of the bin installation and the emptying of it? Owen?
I'll send all that to you.
Okay.
And then I think I've got it somewhere anyway. I think I had it some time ago. So I can just dig that out for you.
Ready for the next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Post box replacement near Brent Corner in the old post office.
That's in hand, actually.
Sorry?
The post office are going to replace it
at
some point. We don't know when.
Okay, right. The telegraph pole in Church Lane has been dealt with. All the ivy and debris has been removed from it. So it was done a couple of weeks ago. So we can write that one off. Website compliance updates and further discussions. Well, we had a useful meeting with Dave, or a Zoom meeting with Dave Macmillan, and he's going to go ahead and Owen, do you want to lead on this one?
Yeah, I mean, basically, we have a situation where the compliance or disability access statement has to be in place by the 23rd of September. So time is running out for us. So Dave has actually just completed Limpsham's website, and I've had a look at it, and he's done a really good job there. So he's taken on the same mantle with ours, and he's apparently worked all over the last weekend apparently on this project, which I think was, you know, really quite quick from his point of view. And so yeah, it's all being done as we speak, at a cost, of course. It's going to cost us. I'm not entirely sure actually what the total cost was in the end, but I can find that out. But basically, he's getting on with it because we have to do it. We have no choice.
Right.
And at the same time, we're trying to get him to make a few changes to the website as well to make it a little bit crisper and a bit easier, a bit more user friendly. And
Right.
Bob's doing some work on the local organisations, you know.
When we got this new information to give to him, do we send it by email or what?
I would.
And does he has to type it all out again?
You can probably cut and paste it, I suspect.
Yeah. So that would be. I have written to him, but he hasn't replied. On any changes we want or reductions.
A lot of the changes were already identified earlier in the year when we had
Yeah.
a physical meeting at Brian's house.
Yeah.
A lot of those changes were identified at that point,
Yeah.
and they're the changes he's now getting on with
Right.
and doing.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else want to say anything on? But it's in hand with Dave McMillan, and he knows what's got to be done. So we've just got to leave it with him now.
Right.
And okay. The speed device.
Your favourite subject.
Yeah, Owen, do you want to go or shall I?
Well, I mean, I think you've probably dealt with it more than me, although I've seen all the correspondence that's gone through. I mean, clearly this unit was in situ, in fact, we ordered it in July 2019, and we still don't have a working unit. And we've had all sorts of dialogue going backwards and forwards from SG to ourselves and to Richard Ibram's been involved, and we haven't really reached any sort of conclusion that's satisfactory to us. So we are now proceeding with returning the unit. Colin and Richard have packed it up. We're waiting for them to collect it, and we should then have a battle on our hands to get a refund, frankly, I think.
I mean, Bob, you spoke to SDC legal guy. I did email him, but he hasn't come back to me. But will they be able to help us in drafting our notice, our plaint notice, or should we take our papers and get a local lawyer to draft them for us? It's important that these things are drafted correctly, and I feel I've given SDC notice that this is what we're doing, so they know. They won't take the kit back. They say it's perfectly functionable, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. We say difference. They were quite rude in an email to us, which we took exception to, and so really we've given up on them. It's all packed up, waiting their collection. We could take it back or send it back, but that's going to cost money. I think what we do, we unfortunately have to reach for some form of either mediation or alternative county court judgment to get money back and resolve the problem. But that's our position. We've given up and we've advised them. I just feel that we should be proactive in getting our legal process underway, because it's not going to solve itself as it is at the moment.
Certainly, Colin, as you say, I spoke to Sedgemoor and they were prepared to work with us in terms of helping us with the letters. So if you've sent something to Mr. Hellard, I'll chase him up and make sure there's a response coming back.
Okay, all right then, I'll do that. Yeah, okay. Anybody else want to make a comment about where we are with the SID? They did come back, as you know, very early one Sunday morning. They've replaced they've given us 2 new batteries. They've given us 2 photocells, free of charge, I hasten to add. The photocells are 600, the batteries about 60 quid. So that's cost us nothing, but it's still not functioning. It's, for instance, as you approach it, it was telling you your speed, i.e. 27 miles an hour, then asking you to slow down. It wouldn't go through the reboot process. It wouldn't go through the test process. There's clearly a problem with it. And we also took up a reference that he gave us with a bloke at Curry Rival. And Owen, do you want to?
Yeah, I spoke to the guy at Curry Rival, and when I spoke to him, he said to me, the first thing he said to me, I know what you're going to ask me. If you're talking about speed indicator device, he said it's been a nightmare from beginning to end. We have resolved it to some extent now, but it's still not working properly. And you know, we will eventually return it in the same way that you're doing with yours. We've just perhaps been a bit more tolerant of their complete ineptness. So we're not alone. SG will tell you that we're the only parish council that had a problem with it. Actually, we now know that we're not. There's somebody else.
Yeah. Okay, so that's where we are. We'll just keep you updated now. But I am concerned that we keep it moving forward and not get complacent, because that won't look good if we have to go down the more formal route. Moving on, Bakersfield, we've got some concerns about the piling that's going on from a Mr. Grant, I think it is. Bob's responded. I've responded to him again today. Do you want to give us an update, Bob, at all?
Only as you said, I mean, we had a briefing from E.G. Carter and the what are now called Willow Tree, which were Southwest Housing, because they've merged as a housing association with another one, and hence the change of name. Basically, they agreed they'd put some publicity in the Brent Knoll News to let people know what was going to happen on the site. So in the current edition, there is a note in there about what they're going to be doing. That will include piling, which is going to take place towards the end of this month. So what we've been advised is that that's likely to be for 2 weeks that will be taking place, and it will be not allowed to happen at weekends. So it will be the 5 working days and within the certain hours of operation. But they've also are installing vibration monitors around the site to monitor what's happening if there is any excessive vibration that takes place. So they are aware that they're being watched, and we're doing obviously what we can from this end to make sure that they stick to what they've been asked to do.
Thank you, Bob. Any other comments regarding Bakersfield? Okay. John, replacement fencing on the village green.
Yep, I spoke to Ian Morgan today. He's been contracted to do the work. He's very clear on what he has to do. All things being equal and the weather permitting, he's going to start on Monday. As I say, he knows exactly what he's got to do, and no doubt Colin and I will go down on Monday just to make quite certain that fair play takes place. But it's all in hand.
Okay, John, I'll get hold of the Butts, the Driscolls and the Keels just to advise them that they're going to start on Monday, okay?
Fine, thank you.
Sorry?
Thank you.
Okay, all right. that concludes item 8. Are there any newsworthy items that we need to consider, Owen, or any councillor? Any newsworthy items?
Anything you'd like to put in the news that would get some airtime?
To be honest, I don't think there's much of priority. I think when some of the jobs that we're doing at the moment, when they are completed, we may publish that. But at the moment, we've got nothing major there, have we?
No.
I must say it's quite nice to see the Red Cow functioning as well as it possibly can in the circumstances. And I think they've done very well.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, matters of report. Let's go round. Brian, any matters of report?
No, not really, except that I'm still thinking about, I'd love to see that telephone box moved from where it is onto the village green. But I know that's how I feel about it, because I think it will be a very good icon on the village green, red against green, both complementary colours. So I think that's just my own opinion.
Okay, thanks, Brian. John, any matters? Warwick, any matters?
Well, I mean, to go on from what Brian was saying, maybe put in the phone box where the sign is, the one that lifts up where the locks are always dodgy, and we need to use it as a sign. We could use the post box to do the same thing, because I'd have thought putting it on the village green, the kids might be tempted to vandalise it.
Yeah.
Not if it was locked.
It would be nice if we could actually make a use of it, even if you put second-hand books in there or something. I know that works against what Bob does, but you
Well, you might be able to shift some.
Sorry?
You might be able to shift more if you did that.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so can we put the future of the phone box onto the next?
Got that down.
Okay. Andrea?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Okay. Nigel?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Andy? Any items you want to bring up at the next meeting?
Yeah, just a note. Really, I read that we've got the parish hall has not made its money, and we're going to have to look to maybe subsidise that. And at the same time, another facility which is close to it is the local shop is sort of performing under voluntary help, but has plans that I think it wants to talk to the parish council about. Is there, both of them are struggling, is there not worth a conversation about, are these two linked, or could we link them to help both of them, as they're both assets to the company, to the village?
Can I just say something about that? When I produced that financial report, which I'm sure everybody's read down to the last word, that I was sent yesterday, one of the items on there was the parish hall. This was not initiated by the parish hall. It was actually initiated by myself, because I felt that all parish halls rely on a certain amount of income from their local residents, and our hall presumably is no exception, that they've had a loss of income this year. And it struck me that because our parish council hasn't necessarily incurred any costs in relation to COVID-19, that we may decide not to, but the parish council might want to consider whether we should make a grant donation or fund the sort of usage that we would have used had we been there to give them some income. But it's certainly not been initiated by them to say they're not coming to us with a begging bowl saying we've had a very bad year, please can you help us. That has not been the case. It's an initiative that I took on board once I saw other parish councils having similar issues with their village halls. So it was purely a discussion point for you as a group members to decide whether you felt that was an appropriate use of council money. And that's a matter for you to decide perhaps at the next meeting when we have the financial report discussed?
Yes, I think we put it on our agenda for the next meeting. I think that's fair and reasonable. Yeah. As regards,
Bob might be able to come in because obviously he's on that committee. Is it a business, and are there opportunities for parish halls to claim any money under the furlough scheme, etc., like others have?
Yes and no. I mean, we're a charitable organisation. We haven't got any staff as such, so the furlough doesn't apply to us. But we did apply under because we are rated as a business premises. We did get grant aid to help us with that. And I'm not going to go into any detail. All I would say is we're not a failing or struggling organisation. We have looked after ourselves with the help of the community for a good number of years. And I wouldn't want it to be thought that we're struggling at this point. Obviously, we've lost a lot of income because people aren't hiring it, and we're not in a position to hold any fundraising events because we can't put them on. So that has hit our income, but I wouldn't want it to be thought that we are in some sort of financial issue, simply because over the years, we have made the provision to make sure that we had some reserve as well. So with the funding that we've had from government that's helped us make up for some of the lost income, and the fact that we do have some reserves, we're not in dire need of financial help. But that doesn't mean to go to say that if anyone wanted to give money to the hall, I'm sure they wouldn't say no. But as I say, I wouldn't want it to get out to be thought that we're suddenly going to crunch, because we're not in that position at the moment.
okay, thanks. But we'll put it on the agenda if you like.
Just one point on the financial report. I don't know, Andrea, whether you're up for a meeting towards the end of September, an audit group meeting on Zoom, because I think we need to get together at some point. There's a whole lot of issues on that report, which perhaps a finance group could have a look at separately, and then take proposals to the council in October, if you're up for that.
Yeah.
So when you get back off holiday, we'll have a chat about a suitable time. Could be in the evening, sorry. Yeah.
Okay. As Andy brought up the question of the shop, I think at this moment in time, Andy, I don't know what other councillors feel, but the shop does have a constituted group. They are in the process of opening their own bank account at the moment, which I understand has been accepted, but it's going to take a few weeks for it to come to fruition. We are helping them with their banking still, and I think we should wait until such time as the constituted group come to us, if they do, with any firm proposals. Okay. In the meantime, they are holding, as you know, or have requested, and probably we haven't, we should have probably discussed this tonight at some stage, because they did make a request to use the village green, which we haven't discussed. They want to have a fundraising event on the village green on about the 26th of September or 27th of September, Bob, something like that. Anyway, I've no objection to this, and are we able to discuss this now?
I think we have to. We haven't got any choice, because we won't get to the next meeting. And matters of report, generally speaking, should only be reported items rather than decision items. But where we've got a situation like this, where we've got a deadline date, where we're serving the local community, I don't think we can be sort of too hard and fast on this particular one, as long as it's not a precedent for future meetings.
What, Bob?
Was only going to say on that one, Colin, we had a similar request, you remember, about the VE or VJ Day, which in the end didn't happen because of issues. But I think the view at that stage was we were okay if they did it, as long as they were responsible for making sure that anyone on there abides by the rules and regs relating to sort of social distancing and stuff.
Yes, yes, and obviously leave the site in the condition in which they originally found it. So can I propose, I know this is probably out of the ordinary, that we agree to the shop committee using the village green on, it's on or about the 26th or 27th of September, or something like that.
Around about that time, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, they're going to put up some small marquees and have coffee, cakes, general fundraising for the shop. I'm happy for them to do that. Do I have a seconder for that? Can somebody second it? Andy, all those in favour that we grant this approval? That's brilliant. I think
Malcolm's okay with it. That's fine.
sense prevails, yeah. Okay. Right, going back. Bob,
Just the last one, sorry. I picked up in the reading as well, the Climate for Energy Community Fund. And I don't know where we picked that up, because there are grants being handed out down to parish level by the government for environmentally friendly ideas.
That's right.
Anything from 5,000 to 75,000.
So we need to come up with some ideas.
Well, my
electric charging points in the car park.
yeah, my suggestion was either we've got to come up with some ideas because it sounds like a big fund. And secondly, would it be worth putting it out as a community project and prize for ideas to come in and be proposed and involve our own community?
When's it got to be in by, Owen?
I think it's October. I'm not entirely sure.
Only arrived today, isn't it? By email.
It's only been the last few days. We've probably got a little bit of time on our side.
Well, I suggest that we probably put it out on a news item then, that there is this funding available for climate for energy, and can anyone suggest to us via Nextdoor or whatever any suitable ideas that we could develop into an application to this fund.
So I'll put it in the BKN next time. Is that the answer?
It might be too late for the BKN.
It may be, but it may not be. It may be okay. But
well,
it's going to have to move pretty quickly, actually.
Yeah, can I propose then that we put something out on Nextdoor anyway, for someone to chew over, but also we put it in the BKN? I.e., would someone like to come forward with any suggestions that the parish council can take forward? Andy?
Sorry, I think Bob was before me.
Oh, sorry. Go on then, Bob.
All I was going to say was, I think if it's the one we're talking about, this is it's not a national one. There's £1 million that's been set aside by the county council. So it's up for schemes to come forward. The applications can start from the beginning of October, and then there's another 6 weeks after that for them to come in, and they will be allocated through this financial year. So it's not going to be cut off immediately early on. But I think you're right in getting the information out there and getting some projects worked up. But it's a local county fund that's being set up for the climate emergency.
Okay, Andy.
Is it worth us, because we've got a short space of time, putting some urgency into this and maybe making it a prize-worthy competition, that if we are awarded some funds, we can reward the idea suggested by the member of the Brent Knoll people? Because otherwise what we'll get is self-interested projects, not necessarily ones that are best for community.
I'll leave it up to councillors to take that on. I mean, there's the school, of course, because the kids may have some ideas as well, which would be worthy of exploring. Shall we, first of all, put it out there, Owen, and then we'll put it in the BKN, and then see what response we get within the next, say, 2 weeks. And then if we get no response by our next meeting, which is well,
The first.
or we look at it by the 16th of September, when our provisional meeting would have been. We just make a diarised date that if we don't have anything by the 16th of September, then we'll pursue inviting people to submit something for a prize, such as Andy suggests, and we can email everyone to see what they think.
Okay.
Does that satisfy you, Andy? Bob?
Chairman, I just think the only thing you need to be careful of is in terms of your prize, as a public body with giving public money, if you're giving it to individuals, we might have a bit, so we'd have to be careful about how this prize is worked out. But that's up, I'm sure we can work something, but we just need to be careful.
Well,
ideally something like the Parent Teacher Association in the school would be an ideal body, because we could give them a grant, couldn't we? Whereas we couldn't do it in individuals, as Bob says.
Yeah, we've got some money in our charity pocket as well, though, haven't we? We do have a charity pocket.
We do.
Okay. So that's Bob. Any other matters of report or no?
Not from me.
Hold on, Malcolm's got something. Hold on.
Chapter 8 renewal.
Chapter 8 renewal. Chapter 8 renewal.
No.
Well, I think we ought to decide whether what we're going to do about the SID before we decide whether we all need to march off and get a Chapter 8 certificate, because at the moment we've got no active SID, so we've got no desire or necessity to have a Chapter 8. I think when we decide what new unit we're going to have and who's going to manage it, then we'll look at that. But I agree, it should be brought up and kept on stones.
Emergency flooding cover, not
Yeah, Malcolm was just saying that it was originally brought in when we had the flooding emergency in the village in 2012. That's when we all, well, a lot of the councillors toddled off to Chapter 8 training because we had the pump and so forth to manage. Yeah, that was the reason why it came in originally. The SID just happened to be, you know, an opportunist. You know.
I thought we marched off to Chapter 8 to erect the speed device, but
it was
corrected. Okay.
Yeah, but
well,
whatever it's called, it doesn't matter, does it? Really?
No, but I think we should be aware that we need to do it. Okay. All right, Bob, you had no other matters of report? Nothing from me. So until our next meeting, which will be 2nd of October, did you say?
1st of October, I think it is.
Yeah.
Which is not what it says on the agenda.
Yes, I was going to say, yeah.
It says we're having another one on the 2nd of September, I believe.
Yeah.
Because it was such a good meeting, we decided to repeat it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay, everyone. Thank you very much indeed.
What happened to the bat item?
What's that?
Bob, what happened to the bat item? The bat in the living room.
That will be in the next BKN.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, it's private.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Again soon.
Thanks,
Stay safe. Bye. Have a good holiday, Andrea.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.